Ma'am, we have to start from 41, ma'am.
स्टार्ट करते हैं.
Good morning, students. We have to start from the last paragraph of page 41. So now we come to know that the man slowly started realizing and understanding the severity of the weather, right? And he also remembered what he was told by the man he met at the Sulphur Creek, that it is not a good idea to travel in such cold weather. When the man had finished, so the man built the fire and he took his lunch sitting next to the fire. The dog also felt comfortable because he had a very strong yearning for the fire. This is the only thing which he desired at that time. So moving ahead, when the man had finished, he filled his pipe and took his comfortable time over a smoke. So because the fire was burning next to him, it was very, very cold. So he took his pipe, and after having his lunch, he started smoking his pipe comfortably. Then he pulled on his mittens, settled the ear flaps of his cap. Ear flaps are those extensions in a cap which are used to cover your ears. So settled the ear flaps of his cap firmly over his ears and took the creek trail up the left. And then he started moving towards the left fork. I told you what is a fork. Fork is the place where anything divides into two, right? So it's the road where the road divided into two. He took that way. The dog was disappointed. The dog didn't like the idea of moving away from the fire because he felt very comfortable sitting next to the fire. And so when he was forced to get up and move ahead, dog was kind of annoyed and disappointed and yearned back towards the fire. And he very strongly desired to be back towards the fire. This man did not know who. Possibly all the generations of his ancestry had been ignorant of who. See, how do we develop our instincts? Our instincts are developed because of the experiences which our ancestors they have had, right? So, but this man who took up this risk of traveling in such cold weather, he was possibly completely ignorant of such cold weather, right? Possibly all the generations of his ancestry had been ignorant of cold. Possibly none of his ancestors have lived in such cold temperature. So that is why his instincts were not that developed as far as the coldness of the place was concerned. Possibly all the generations of his ancestry had been ignorant of cold, of real cold, of cold 107 degrees below freezing point. So they were completely ignorant of such extreme cold weather. That is why the man was ignorant of such cold weather. There are certain things, certain instincts which we inherit from our ancestors, from our fathers and forefathers, right? So because it seemed that this man's generation, in the past generations, they have not suffered, they have not lived in such cold weather. So that is why he was ignorant and he had the guts to travel in such weather. But the dog was not. You remember, he was a husky. Husky dogs, they are found in cold regions. So their generations and generations have seen this type of weather. That is why the dog was scared and he didn't want to travel. It didn't want to travel in these temperatures. But the dog knew, right? But the dog knew means all its ancestry knew. But the ancestors of dogs, they have seen such weather, they have lived in such weather, they have survived in such weather. So they knew the reality of the situation. They understood the severity of the situation and it had inherited the knowledge, right? So the dog had inherited the knowledge from his ancestors because all the ancestors of the dogs have lived in these temperatures. So the dog has inherited that knowledge about the coldness of the weather. And it knew that it was not good to walk abroad in such fearful cold. Right? So the dog knew. It was the time to lie snug in a hole in the snow and wait for the curtain of the clouds to be drawn across the face of the outer space whence this cold came. Whence means from where this cold came. So the dog knew, the dog very clearly understood that this is not the time to travel or set out on a journey. This is the time to snug. Snug means to keep yourself warm and comfortable, to dig a hole and sit there in a warm, comfortable place, right? Not get out of the house and start on a new journey. And wait for the curtain of clouds to be drawn across the face of the outer space. See, when the curtain of cloud will be drawn, what will happen? They will feel less cold, right? We don't feel much cold in a cloudy day, right? Because what happens? The curtain of cold that the curtain of cloud, that layer of cloud, it protects the coldness from entering the atmosphere, right? So that is what the dog felt, that they should wait for the curtain of cloud to be drawn over the face of the outer space. When there will be a curtain of cloud on the outer space, then the temperatures will rise a bit. It will be a little warmer in comparison to the present situation. Whence this cold came? Because the cold winds, they will not be able to enter from the outer space. So the dog realized this, but the man did not. On the other hand, there was no keen intimacy. Another reason why the dog was reluctant was that there was no keen intimacy between the dog and the man. The relationship between the dog and the man was not good. The man never treated his dog with love, with care. This has also been explained. The one was the toil slave of the other. The dog was only used by the man to do hard work. The dog was only treated by the man like a slave. And the only caresses it had ever received were the caresses of the whiplash. So the dog only got, the only caress and affection which the dog got was the lashing from a whip. He was whipped, he was hit badly by the man. So in place of affection, love and care, the dog only got a beating from this man. So the dog knew that this man doesn't love me, doesn't care. Right? So that relationship between the dog and the man, see, everyone understands love. Love is a language which is understood by everyone. Every single creature of this earth understands love. They may not be able to express it in words, but still they understand. So the dog was very well aware of this fact, that it was just a slave, a toil slave to do work, to do hard work, right? And the only caresses it has ever received were the caresses of the whiplash and of harsh and menacing throat sound, right? Menacing means threatening, right? When you try to scare someone or something which warns of danger, so that is threatening throat sound. So either the man was screaming, shouting, scolding his dog, or he was whipping his dog. This was the only treatment meted out to that husky. That threatened the whiplash. Either he was whiplashed in reality, or he got those threats to be whiplashed from the man. So the dog made no effort to communicate its apprehension to the man. Apprehension means fear. So because the relationship between the dog and the man was not good, so the dog was also not very much interested in telling the man about the apprehension about his fears. Right? The dog never made any attempt to communicate the dangers or the threats of traveling in this weather to this man by its behavior. Obviously, the dog is not going to tell you in spoken word, but through gestures, the dog didn't communicate anything because the dog was kind of scared of this man. He knew that this man has always ill-treated me and will only ill-treat me if I disobey him. So the dog made no effort to communicate its apprehension to the man. It was not concerned in the welfare of man. The dog was least interested in the welfare of man. It was only interested in its own welfare, and the dog felt that he will feel good and comfortable by sitting next to the fire. It was for its own sake that it aimed back towards the fire. So for its own sake, the dog was not interested whether the man lives or he dies. If the man dies, it will be fine, better for the dog. Because as long as this man lives, he will only go on whipping him, hitting him. So it was only for his own sake, it was only for his own selfish interest that the dog wanted to be next to the fire. But the man whistled and spoke to it with the sound of a whiplash. Sound of a whiplash means, again, those threatening sound, right? In a very harsh, cruel manner. The man talked to the dog, and the dog swung at the man's heels and followed after. So the dog couldn't afford to disobey the man because the man threatened him with his language, with actually hitting the dog also. So the dog was scared and he had no option except to follow the man. So the dog did the same. The man took a chew of tobacco and proceeded to start a new amber bear. You know that amber bear which was formed, right? Which covered his mouth and chin area, right? Because he was chewing tobacco and spitting. So the spit of man, whatever he came out of his mouth, his saliva, it deposited on his face only, right? So, and then he melted that muzzle which was formed over his mouth, that covering which of ice which was formed over his mouth. He thawed it by sitting next to the fire. Now, after having his lunch, he again started chewing tobacco, now which will help in building another amber colored beard. Also, his moist breath quickly powdered with white his mustaches, eyebrows, and lashes. So the breath which he was exhaling, that deposited because of the cold weather, it deposited on his mustaches, eyebrows, and eyelashes. There did not seem to be so many springs on the left fork of the Hindus. And for half an hour, the man saw no signs of it. So there seemed to be no springs, and for half an hour, the man walked comfortably without any signs of danger. That somewhere the crust of ice might be thin and he might go inside. So there was no danger of traps. And so he walked comfortably for the next half an hour. And then it happened. And then all of a sudden he came across one of the traps was there, and he went inside at a place where there was no sign. So at a place where there was no sign of a spring being there, where the soft unbroken snow seemed to advertise solidity. The snow, the layer of the snow which was there, it seemed to tell the man, it hinted to the man, it made obvious to the man that here the ice will be very solid and he will not go inside water. The place where he had such a feeling, at that very place, the man broke. The layer of ice broke and inside was water. So his feet got wet. It was not deep, though that's water was not deep in that area. He wet himself halfway to the knees. So halfway to the knees, maybe up to the shins, he got himself wet before he floundered out to the firm grass. Flounder means to walk with some difficulty. So he quickly got his feet out of it, and with some difficulty he moved to the firm grass where the ice was firm and thick. He was angry and cursed his luck aloud. So he didn't like this. Why? Because now he'll be late in reaching the camp. He had planned everything, and according to his plan, he should be at his camp by 6 o'clock in the evening. But getting wet made it difficult now. He had hoped to get to the camp and get into the camp with the boys at 6 o'clock. And this would delay him an hour. Because now he cannot walk like this with his feet wet. It will freeze. So the first thing now which he's supposed to do is to dry his moccasins and his feet. They should be dry before he can again move ahead with his journey. So this will delay him by an hour, and so he was annoyed. For he would have to build a fire and dry out his footgear. Footgear means footwear, whatever he was wearing on his foot. This was imperative at that low temperature. This was imperative. This was like something which cannot be avoided. He had to do it anyhow. He knew that much. And he turned aside to the bank which he climbed. On top, tangled in the underbrush about the trunks of several small spruce trees, was a high water deposit of dry firewood. So now he had to collect those twigs and sticks and try to build a fire so that he can light the fire and dry his footgear and feet by sitting next to the fire. Principally, but also larger portions of seasoned branches and fine dry last year's grass. So the grasses, twigs, and other things there were deposits. These things, these twigs and sticks, they were deposited by the water, and now they were seasoned branches, means they were ready to be burned, right? They were dry branches which could be burned by the man. He threw down several large pieces on top of the snow. This served for the foundation and prevented the young flame from drowning itself in the snow. It otherwise would fail. He needed to form a layer of twigs and sticks before he could light the fire. Why? Because if he light like this, the snow will melt and the fire will extinguish, right? So he first kept few twigs and sticks and other dried leaves and all these things, and then he tried to build the fire over that layer so that the snow doesn't melt and the fire keeps on burning. The flame he got by touching a match to a small shred of birch bark. Birch barks were used to light fire. They were like the matchsticks that he took from his pocket. So he took out a birch bark from his pocket and got the flame. This burned even more readily than paper. This burned quickly and faster than paper. Placing it on the foundation, he fed the young flame with wisps of dry grass and with the tiniest dry twigs. So wisp means thin threads and shreds of these twigs and the sticks which were there, thin pieces of grass and twigs which were there. So then once the fire was lighted, he kept on feeding the fire with these things, with threads of dry grass and twigs which were present there, which he had collected. Okay. So we have to start from here. He worked slowly and carefully, keenly aware of his danger. So he was, we know that he got his feet wet, and now the first thing which he was supposed to do was to dry his feet. Otherwise, the blood circulation will stop and he will not be able to move his leg, right? So if his leg will freeze. So the first thing was for him was to build the first thing which he was supposed to do was to build a fire. So he worked slowly and carefully, keenly aware of the danger, and he was very well acquainted of the danger. So he worked very carefully in building the fire. Gradually, as the flame grew stronger, he couldn't afford to let the fire die out, right? Because that would mean great danger for him. He increased the size so slowly. He led the fire, he burned the fire using small twigs and dry grass, and then slowly he kept on feeding that flame so that the flame increases. So gradually, as the flame grew stronger, he increased the size of the twigs with which he fed it. So slowly he went on increasing the size of the twigs. He squatted in the snow, pulling the twigs out from their entanglement in the brush and feeding directly to the flame. So he used to pull the twigs which were there deposited in that region. He pulled them out and kept on feeding them directly to the flame. He knew there must be no failure. He was aware of this fact that there cannot be any failure. He cannot afford to fail in his attempt of building the fire, because that would mean great risk to his life. When it is 75 below zero, a man must not fail in his first attempt to build the fire. So when the temperatures are 75 below zero, a man cannot and should not fail in his attempt to build the fire. That is, if his feet are wet, and especially when his feet are wet, then he cannot fail to build a fire. He has to build a fire anyhow to save his life. If his feet are dry and he fails, he can run along the trail for half a mile and restore his circulation. If his feet are dry, then how can he maintain the circulation of the body? By running. But now his feet are wet, so he cannot even run. Running will not help. So the only option left for him was to build the fire and let his feet dry. But the circulation of wet and freezing feet cannot be restored by running. So because you cannot restore the blood circulation by running when it is 75 below zero and your feet are wet, so the only option you are left with is fire. No matter how fast he runs, the wet feet will freeze the harder. So it doesn't matter how fast he runs, but the freezing will continue if his feet are wet. If his feet would have been dry, no problem. Even if the fire fails, he could run and maintain the blood circulation in the body. But if his feet are wet, he cannot afford to fail in his attempt to build the fire. All this the man knew. The man, because the man was educated, the man was knowledgeable, so he knew these things. The old timer on Sulphur Creek had told him about it the previous fall. So the old timer means the experienced person, the person who has a lot of experience. So the person who was acquainted of the place, you know that this person that is the protagonist of this story, he is a Checheko, means he is a newcomer in this area. He's not very much aware of this particular area and the temperatures and everything. Still, he took the risk of moving out. But he met an old timer, an experienced person on the Sulphur Creek, who told him about it the previous fall. Previous fall means during the last autumn, he had told him. And now he was appreciating the advice. So he remembered the advice given by the experienced person whom he met in the Sulphur Creek, and now he was appreciating that advice and he was applying that particular advice in the present situation. Already all sensation had gone out of his feet. So his feet had become numb because they were wet and it was very cold. To build the fire, he had been forced to remove his mittens. And because he had to light the fire anyhow, so he had to remove his mittens, that is the gloves which he was wearing. And the fingers had quickly gone numb. And because he removed his gloves to light the fire, so his fingers also went numb. His pace of 4 miles an hour had kept his heart pumping blood to the surface of his body and to all the extremities. Extremities means the edges of the body, the end parts of your body, like your limbs, your fingers, your toes, those are the edges of the body. So because he was walking till now, he was walking at a great speed, that is 4 miles an hour. So this speed, it was a good speed and it kept his blood pumping to the surface of the body and to all the parts of the body. If you walk fast, the circulation of the blood increases. So this is what kept his blood pumping properly in such cold weather to the extreme edges of his body. But the moment he stopped, the action of the pump eased down. The action of the pump eased down means it relaxed. The blood circulation lowered, right? The cold of the space smote the unprotected tip of the planet, and he, being on that unprotected tip, received the full force of the blow. Right? So smote means to hit something, right, with great force. That is, so this place, this particular tip, this particular area of the earth, planet means mother earth. So this particular area of this planet was hit badly by the weather, and because he was present in that particular area of the earth, in that particular tip of the planet, so he was also at the receiving end of this blow. He also received this blow with full force, right? The blood of his body recoiled before it. Recoil means to go back, right, to retreat. So the blood, which was the moment he stopped moving, the moment he stopped walking, what happened? The blood of his body started going back, right, to move away. When he was walking, the blood circulation was proper and the body was able to supply blood to the extreme edges, to the extreme points of the body also. That is to the limbs and to the tips of the finger and the toes and the surface of the body. But the moment he stopped walking, what happened? The blood started recoiling. Recoiling means moving away, right? As if it was trying to hide away in some place. The blood started returning. The blood of his body recoiled before it. The blood was alive, like dog. Now here the blood has been compared to the dog. Like dog wanted to recoil, the dog didn't want to travel, continue the journey and wanted to sit in some safe hidden place. So similarly, the blood of his body also wanted to hide away from the extreme edges of the body and wanted to settle in some hidden corner of the body. The blood was alive like the dog. And like the dog, it wanted to hide away. So because the blood inside a living person is alive. So here the blood in the body has been compared to the dog. And like the dog we know that he didn't want to travel. It wanted to settle down next to the fire. And like the dog, it wanted to hide away and cover itself up from the fearful cold. So long as he walked 4 miles an hour, he pumped that blood willy-nilly. So like he was forcing the dog to move. So by his speed, he was forcing the blood also to circulate in his body. When he maintained that speed of 4 miles an hour, the blood was forced to pump to the edges of his body throughout his body. But once he lowered that pace, what happened? The blood started recoiling and returning to some secret corners, hidden corners of the body. So long as he walked 4 miles an hour, he pumped that blood willy-nilly. Willy-nilly means whether willingly or unwillingly to the surface. But now it ebbed away. Ebbing means to move back. Flow means to move forward. Ebb means to move backward. But now that blood ebbed away and sank down into the recesses of the body. Recesses means hidden parts of the body. So now, because he was not walking, the body was not in motion, so the blood sank to the recesses of the body, that is the hidden areas of the body. The extremities were the first to feel its absence. And then the blood started retreating, going back, moving away. So the extremities means the edges of the body, that is the fingers and the toes. They were the first regions, they were the first places in the body to feel the absence of blood. You know, when it is extremely cold, the first thing which goes numb is your fingers. And then the toes. If the toes and the fingers, they are not covered properly, they will go numb, right? So because they are the extremities of the body, so even the nose is a protruding portion of your body, and so that also goes numb. So the first thing, the first parts of the body which go numb, they are the extremities. So the extremities were the first to feel the absence of blood. What is being numb? Being numb is absence of blood. When the blood circulation lowers or comes down, then that portion of the body goes numb. You don't feel any sensation in that portion of the body. So the extremities were the first to feel the absence of blood. His wet feet froze the faster, and his exposed fingers numbed the faster. So because the feet were wet, so they froze very quickly, and his exposed fingers numbs the faster. And because he has removed the mittens or the gloves from his fingers, so his fingers were also going numb because they were the extremities of the body or the extreme weakness of the body. Though they had not yet begun to freeze. Though his fingers, they have not yet started freezing, but still because they were uncovered, so they have started going numb. Nose and cheeks were already freezing. So his nose and cheeks were already freezing. This has been told earlier also because they were uncovered. They have been continuously exposed to such cold temperatures, and so they had started freezing. While the skin of all his body chilled and it lost its blood. So because now the blood was not flowing to the surface of the body, he was not in motion. So the skin of all his body chilled and it lost its blood, right? So the blood shrank, and so it was not reaching the skin or the surface of the body, so he suffered chills throughout his body, especially the exposed portions of the skin suffered the most. But he was safe. Toes and nose and cheeks would be only touched by frost. So he knew that his life will be safe. If he is able to light the fire, his life will be safe. Oh, there will be only like some problem with the toes, nose and cheeks. They will be touched by frost. So there will be only little damage to his body, but his life will be saved anyhow. For the fire was beginning to burn with strength. Because he had lighted the fire, and now the fire was becoming stronger, and so he knew that he will be safe. He was feeding it with twigs the size of his finger. So first he fed the fire with the twigs which were the size of his finger. In another minute, he would be able to feed it with branches. And slowly, as the size of the fire will grow, he will put larger and bigger twigs and branches in that fire. In another minute, he will be able to feed it with branches the size of his wrist. And then he could remove his wet footgear, and while it dried, he could keep his naked feet warm by the fire, rubbing them at first, of course, with snow. So he knew that as the fire will grow stronger, he can take out his shoes, remove his wet footgear which have gone wet, and then he can dry his naked feet and the shoes also sitting next to the fire and warm his toes and feet. But first he will have to rub them with snow, right? Before he warms them, so that he is like the blood circulation again starts. The fire was a success. He was safe. So he was successful in his attempt, or rather he thought that he was successful because there is an accident which is waiting, right? So he thought that he was successful in his attempt to build the fire, and he felt good about it. He thought that now he is safe. He remembered the advice of the old timer on Sulphur Creek and smiled. So now he starts feeling proud of himself, right? Because he again recollected the advice which was given by the experienced person whom he met at the Sulphur Creek, and he smiled to himself. The old timer had been very serious in laying down the law that no man, this was the advice given by the old timer, no man must travel alone in Klondike after 50 below. Right? This was the advice which was given by the man, that is the experienced man whom he met at the Sulphur Creek, that no man should travel alone in the Klondike, that is the city in Canada, right, after 50 below. Right? A person, if he wants to travel, if there is an emergency, he should take a companion along with him. But this man ignored the advice given by the old timer and that is the experienced person. Well, here he was. And so that is why he was smiling, because he was, at this moment, he was too proud of himself, that he ignored the advice of an experienced person and still he is successful, right? Though he met with some adversity, that his feet were wet, but again he was able to light the fire, and now the fire is burning successfully in front of him, right? So he thought the old timer to be a fool. Well, here he was. He had the accident. He was alone and he had saved himself. So this is what made him feel proud. That here he was traveling alone. He had an accident. He was alone. He didn't have any help. He didn't have a companion, and still he managed to save himself. So because he didn't follow the advice of the old timer and still he was safe, right? He managed to find a solution to his problem and he was able to manage things on his own. So this made him feel proud. Those old timers were rather women. So this is his opinion now. Those old timers are rather womanish. Some of them, womanish means non-manly, right? Unmanly, cowards. So he says that these old timers, they are not manly enough. They don't have the guts. They don't have the courage. Some of them, he thought, especially this type, the type he met, right? So some of them, they don't have the guts to travel alone, and so they go on giving these kind of advice to the people. He thought all a man had to do was to keep his head. So he was of the opinion that a person only needs to act sensibly, should keep his head, should keep calm, should not panic, and he was all right, and he can manage all the problems which come across his way nicely. So he considered the old timer to be a fool in these lines. Any man who was a man could travel alone. So any man who was a man means any man who has the guts, any man who has the courage, any man who has the valor, right, can travel alone. Who is a man enough, who is not scared, who is not frightened, who is not a coward, he can travel alone. But it was surprising, the rapidity with which his cheeks and nose were freezing. See, because he was alone, he didn't have any company to talk to. So these were the thoughts which were coming to his head, right? He was reflecting on these things. He cannot talk to the dog. So the only companion he had was a husky, was a dog. So he cannot go on talking to a dog. So he started thinking. So he had enough time to contemplate and think. So these were the thoughts which were coming to his mind. But it was surprising. Then the next thing which he thought was about the temperature. But it was surprising the rapidity with which his cheeks and nose were freezing. So because his cheeks and nose were freezing very quickly, so he was kind of surprised how quickly they have started freezing. And he had not thought his fingers could go lifeless in so short a time. So he had not even realized, he never thought that his fingers can go lifeless. Lifeless means numb in so short a time. The moment he removed his mittens, gloves, his fingers were numb. Lifeless they were, for he could scarcely make them move together to grip a twig. So his fingers had almost gone lifeless because he was not even able to make a grip. Right? Because of the lack of flow of blood, because of the lack of blood circulation in that area, because they were the extreme regions of the body, his fingers, he was finding it very difficult to even move them, right? And they were without any sensation. They had gone stiff. Scarcely make them move together to grip a twig. He realized this when he was making an attempt to pick up a twig and place it in the fire. Then he realized that his fingers had almost gone lifeless, right? He didn't even feel that his fingers were any longer a part of his body. This is what happens, right? When one part of your body goes numb, don't have any sensation in that area, and you feel that that portion of the body has been disconnected, right? It is no longer attached to your body. So, for he could scarcely make them move together to grip a twig, and they seemed remote from his body. Remote from his body means they seemed distant from his body, right? And from him. When he touched a twig, he had to look and see whether or not he had hold of it. So, because there was no sensation, when you touch, when you pick up anything, you have a sensation that you're holding something in your hand. But because his fingers had gone lifeless, so he had to actually see with his eyes that he is holding a twig, because he couldn't feel any sensation of holding a twig. So he had to use his eyes to see. The wires were pretty well down between him and his finger. So the connection, the wires were pretty well down means the connection of nerves between his fingers and the rest of his body, his finger ends and the rest of his body, it was down, means there was no communication between the tips of his finger and the rest of his body. Any problem till all of which counted for little. So he thought that all these things, once he is able to build a fire, all these things, they don't count to be something very serious. They don't matter. They are immaterial. There was fire snapping and crackling and promising light. Why? Because he was successful in his attempt of building the fire, in making the fire. Now the fire was lighting in front of him, snapping and crackling. So the fire, because you must have also experienced this, when you put twigs and dry branches to a fire, it makes some crackling sound. So crackling and promising light, and light with every dancing flame. So the flames, they were also dancing. The fire was burning nicely, and so the rest of the things, the rest of the thoughts about the dangers which were coming to his mind, they were immaterial, right? They didn't matter much. He started to untie his moccasins. So what did he do? He started removing his moccasins, or the shoes which he was wearing. They were coated with ice. Because they were wet, so they were coated with ice. The water on them was turned into ice. The thick German socks were like sheets of iron. So the thick German socks which he was wearing to protect himself from the cold, right? They were like sheets of iron. They were like the sheets of iron, halfway to the knees, right? So now, because of they were wet also, so the ice, the layer of ice was formed upon them, so they became very hard, and they were now like iron up to the knees. And the moccasin strings were like rods of steel, right? Because they were wet, so all of the things, they became very stiff. So the moccasin strings were like rods of steel, all twisted and knotted as by some conflagration. Conflagration means fire. What happens when the thing is, when something is burnt, what they turn, twist, get entangled. So that is what he means to say, that the laces, the shoe laces, right? They were, ice was deposited, layer of ice was there on top of them, and they were twisted and turned like some conflagration, as if there had been extensive fire and it had been burnt in it. So they seem to be really hard. For a moment, he tugged with his numb fingers, then realizing the folly of it, he drew his sheath knife. So for a moment, he tried to, his fingers were numb. He will not be able to use his fingers, right? So for a moment, he tried to untie the laces of his shoes using his fingers, but numb fingers, he was helpless, right? So what he did, he understood that whatever he's trying to do is something very foolish, and so he took out his sheath knife. Sheath knife is a small knife, right? A knife with a sheath. Sheath means a covering, right? It has a covering on top of it, and it is a small knife like a dagger, right? So like a dagger, it is a small knife, with a covering, with the encasement to keep it. But before he could cut the strings, it happened. But then he took out the knife, he wanted to cut those laces so that he's able to remove his shoes, because everything was very hard, right? It was not possible to untie the laces using his numb fingers. So he thought of cutting them with his knife or the dagger which he was carrying. But before he could cut the strings, it happened. Then something happened, right? Before he could actually cut the strings and remove his shoes to dry, something happened. It was his own fault, or rather his mistake. And whatever happened because of his own fault or mistake. He should not have built the fire under the spruce tree. What was the mistake he committed? The mistake he committed was of building the fire under the spruce tree. Right? So what must have happened? The ice on top of because everything was covered with ice. So the ice which is there on the branches, when you will light a fire under a tree, right? In such cold temperatures, when there is ice, the fire should always be lit in the open space, not under a tree. Why? Because what will happen? Because of the heat of the fire, if you light a fire under a tree, because of the heat of the fire, the snow on top of the tree, on the branches of the tree, it will melt because of heat, and then it will come down. So this is what happened with this man. He committed this mistake, right? Or fault, whatever you may call. He lit a fire under the spruce tree, and the ice on top of the tree came down and extinguished the fire. He should have built it in the open, right? So he should have remembered to build the fire in the open. But it had been easier to pull the twigs from the branches and drop them directly on the fire. Why did he light the fire under the tree? Because it was easier for him to pull the branches and feed those twigs and branches to the fire. So that is why he unknowingly built the fire under a tree. Now the tree under which he had done this carried a weight of the snow on its bough. Bough means branches. So the tree under which he attempted to light the fire, under which he lighted the fire, on top of that tree, on the branches of that tree, there was a heavy weight of snow. No wind had blown for weeks, and each bough was fully filled. So because see what happens when in these areas the wind blows, it carries away the snow also, right? A small amount of the snow which is deposited on the branches, on the leafless branches of the tree, and the wind blows, what happens? The snow falls to the ground. But because no wind has blown in this area for a long time, so the snow kept on depositing. And now each bough, that is each branch, was fully freighted. Now each branch of the tree had huge amount of snow on them. Each time he had pulled a twig, he had communicated a slight agitation to the tree. So this added. Each time he pulled a twig from the tree, there was some motion. The snow on top of the branches, right? It moved a little. There was, because the tree felt slight agitation each time he pulled the snow. An imperceptible agitation as far as he was concerned, right? So it was like not something which is not to be noticed, right? He didn't notice, he didn't realize. Imperceptible means very insignificant, not to be noticed. So very unnoticeable kind of agitation. But the tree was standing still with all the snow on top of it, on its branches for such a long time, and even the slightest agitation made an impact on it. The slightest movement, when he was plucking the branches and the twigs, the tree moved a little, right? So though it was very unnoticeable, the agitation, the movement was very unnoticeable so far as he was concerned. He didn't notice it, but the tree noticed. But an agitation sufficient to bring about a disaster. He didn't notice that agitation, that movement which was happening to the tree, but it was enough to bring about the disaster. High up in the tree, one bough capsized. Okay, so the snow didn't fell because of the fire, it fell because of the agitation which he caused to the tree when he was plucking the branches, right? When he was plucking the twigs and the small branches from the tree. High up in the tree, one bough capsized. Capsized means overturn, right? Capsized means to turn upside down. Its load of snow. So because of this agitation, one bough in the tree, one of the branches of the tree, it overturned its load of snow. The load of snow which was kept on it, it overturned. This fell on the bough beneath, capsizing them. So what happened? Because all the branches had huge amount of snow, it has been mentioned that all the branches, they were fully freighted. Fully freighted means had a lot of load on them. So what happened? The moment one branch capsized its load of the snow, overturned its load of snow, it fell on the other branch. The other branch again shed off its load, which came when everything came shattering down. This fell on the boughs beneath, capsizing them, right? So one load, one huge piece of snow fell on the other branch. The other branch already had a snow on it. It was capsized, it was overturned, and this way, this process continued spreading out and involving the whole tree. So slowly the whole tree was involved. It grew like an avalanche. This is how avalanches happen, right? One slight movement moves the other rocks and snow. And then everything is in motion, which causes great disaster. So, and it descended without warning upon the man and the fire. The fire was blotted out. The fire was blotted out means the fire was put out. So, because such a load of snow, such a huge load of snow, a huge amount of snow fell on the fire. Where it had burned was a mantle of the fresh and disordered snow, right? So there was the place where there was fire burning a little while ago. Now there was only snow. Disordered snow. Disordered snow means scattered snow, right? Because all the blocks which were there on the tree, they fell in a disorderly manner, in an unorganized manner. So the place where there was fire burning a little while ago, some time ago, now what was there? There was only snow scattered in a disorderly manner to be seen. I think we should end the class here and we move ahead on the next term.